is ideally not going to be one of those just say this and just say that kind of classes, because there's a lot of advice as far as ways to be confident by giving you suggested behaviors, but if your internal identity isn't congruent with the kind of advice that you're being given, or the kind of behaviors that that you're trying to use, they're only going to have a limited use. If no matter how confident the behavior externally is, if it doesn't match with what feels comfortable to you, with what your identity is, either it's only going to work to a limited degree, or it'll work for a while, but you won't be able to maintain it because it's going in a different direction than the way you're comfortable. We were saying just before we got started, sometimes it has a funny vibe, an insincere vibe to it. And the most naturally confident people, one of the hallmarks, at least that I think of when I think of a confident person, is somebody who has a sort of a comfortableness with themselves and authenticity, comfortable with themselves in their surroundings. Much better, people who are naturally confident tend to feel very comfortable with where they are. They tend to, well, I don't know, I mean, actually, rather than lecturing, there's going to be a lot of participation. It's not going to be all talky because I don't like going to those things, so I wouldn't inflict you with that. And we're going to do some exercises, and hopefully before you leave, we're going to actually make some great changes. So without further ado, what's confidence? I mean, clearly when you see two people and one of them seems clearly confident and the other one seems to lack confidence, it says a lot more than just how they feel about themselves. If you're going to follow one of those people, obviously you want to follow the confident one, because, I mean, what does confidence say? And aside from just feeling comfortable with confidence, confidence says you're making the right decisions. It implies a kind of a strength and a kind of a direction. And you think about, on the flip side, what's lack of confidence? Lack of confidence can be perceived as a kind of a weakness, certainly kind of a confusion. I mean, when times when you feel a lack of confidence, what does it feel like? I mean, for some people, it can feel like anything, you know, everyone's different, but for a lot of people, that lack of confidence has an uncertainty, yeah, absolutely. But I think confidence and lack of confidence, because you're looking at direction to a certain degree. And if confidence is a kind of a sense of direction, a sense of strength, a lot of people who I've worked with experience lack of confidence as a kind of an agitated feeling, or kind of jumping between two or three things back and forth, and it's a very jumpy feeling. Which may not be true for everybody, and if it's not true for you, that's absolutely all right. But or it could be a blankness as well, as Casey was saying. But there's a lack of commitment to a direction. And yeah, I had a very interesting conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, and we were talking about what the teabaggers have in common with the hippies. And you wouldn't think they have anything in common. I mean, one's a very conservative thing, one's a very liberal thing, one dresses in colors, one dresses, you know, very conservatively. But the one thing that they have, which attracts people, is a very clear direction. You know, you can argue on specific points of, you know, those guys are crazy, you know, blah, blah, blah. Depending upon where you're coming from, it could apply to either one. But very clearly, the 60s movement had a very clearly defined goal that they were moving towards, very positive, single-minded energy. And again, you talk about the teabaggers, and while there's a lot of political intrigue, they've stated very clearly what their goals are, and they've got people moving with a very clear emotional direction. And there's a certain kind of confidence to that. I feel is that most people are actually already more confident than they give themselves credit for. That people tend to focus on their weaknesses and on the things that bother them. Because you know, if you stub your toe, you're going to be aware of it. It's going to be painful and it's going to bother you. But the other 9 toes that feel great, you don't think about them. And so to the same degree, very often, people are very, very confident in a lot of areas. And it's the one area that they feel they lack confidence, one or two areas they feel they lack confidence in, that take up the whole movie screen of their mind. And in fact, sometimes the more competent people are in other areas, the more they have natural confidence, the less they're aware of that, because the more the one or two things that they don't have that exist, the more they stand out in their mind. And I was just saying, when we first got here, very often I'll get individual clients who will come in, and there'll be these young guys that go, yeah, I'm very self-conscious, and you can just see by the body language, these guys are oozing confidence.
Right.
And I'm wondering, what they're gonna do, and usually it's just one particular area, which of course gets into another interesting question we're gonna cover, which is, how do you know you're confident? I mean, because when you're living with yourself every day, and you're already taking for granted those other 9 non-stubbed toes, what else are you taking for granted? Because we tend to overlook a lot of things. And because we don't live as isolated beings, but we live in a community, in an environment, in a city, in a state, in all of these things, with all of this competing information coming in, so we're not always just aware of us, but we're aware of the interactions in our environment. And that environment also has an impact. And that environment can have an impact to show off your strengths, or it can have an impact on you in such a way that it makes you more aware of your lapses, and just weak areas.